Peace, family. I pray that all is well. Thank you for stopping by for another video. I appreciate you all. Watch this video out to the end. Watch this one out to the end. We're talking about something that's very vital in our everyday life, right? So I want to start this off by saying that no man lives unto himself, right? Every living thing is bound by cords to every other living thing. So blessed are those that are pure in heart, right? Because they will love and they won't demand love in return, right? They won't do to other people what they would not have other people do unto them, right? So understanding that we're moving into the topic of something that I see a lot, that a lot of people talk about, but they don't really understand the subject at hand. They don't really understand the full scope of what it is that we're speaking on. And that is that there are two selves, right? We have a higher self and a lower self. Okay? So our higher self, right, is human spirit. It's our spirit. The spirit is infinite. Infinite. Does not die. The infinite life that's a part of our Creator. That He breathed within us, that breath, that spirit. It's infinite. That's a part of Him. Right? And it's clothed with soul. And this is the higher self. The spirit clothed with the soul. It makes higher self. Now the soul can pass away. Right? So the soul can pass away. The soul does have a beginning and an end. But the spirit is infinite. Now, our lower self is just this flesh. This flesh has senses. It has urges. The law of this flesh is to survive on this land. So we have senses. We have urges in this flesh on this lower self realm. Right? On this plane of manifest. Right? On this plane of earth. Of everything that we can see with our flesh eyes. So this is the lower self. Right? And so the lower self, the law of the lower self is survival. So it'll give you urges. It'll just urge you. It'll pinch your nerve. It'll react in this kind of way to put forth into that law of survival. And so, for example, reproduction is survival. So it'll say, when you with a woman, it'll say reproduce, 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 right? Or in a lot of instances, battle is survival, right? Taking things is a part of our survival. So many things. However, the issue is when we start falling into those desires, when we start preferring those urges over the urges or over the law or the being, the essence of God. This is what we call taking it outside of the bounds of righteousness. So understanding that what is the higher self and what is the lower self. Because you perceive the urges from both with thought. And so your lower self will give you an urge that will spark a thought. And you may think that your higher self is talking to you. You may think that your higher self is giving you the discretion. You may think that your higher self is giving you the good judgment. But that's lower self deceiving you. Because the lower self is the best of deceivers. Right? The lower self is always working to try and keep you in your desires, in that what we call hatred, slander, lewdness, murders, theft, and everything that harms. So the lower self is going to pull you in that regard, right? And so it is extremely important to understand this dynamic of the higher self and the lower self. And the reason why we pull that back into the statement that I said at the beginning, that nobody lives unto themselves. Every living thing is bound by cords to every other living thing. It shows us that we are accountable for our actions. We are accountable for our choices. Are we choosing to follow the higher self, or are we choosing to follow the lower self? We're accountable for our actions, for our choices in that manner, right? we're accountable for them 100%. So when we talk about that, no man lives unto himself, right? And that blessed are the pure in heart. Those that will love and not demand love in return are operating off of that higher self energy. That's higher self. That's the law of God within you. Because your higher self is that part of God that is within you. It is God within you. Is your higher self. And so, because again, Allah breathed his breath into man. So God, Allah's breath is within all of man. Right? We all have his breath within us. He is within us. Right? And then that breath directs the soul. Right? That breath gives life to the soul. And the soul is what's made perfect. Is what's made in the image and after the likeness. Right? Then these give life to the flesh. The flesh is not, when we say we're made in the image of God, the flesh is not made in the image of God. The soul is the image of God. So the lower self is a reflection of the higher self. Getting into all of these things, just understanding that where are we pulling our action from? Where are we basing our thoughts from? Where are we basing our emotions from? What are we reasoning off of? Are we reasoning based off of the lower self, which breeds hatred, slander, lewdness, murders, theft, and everything that harms? Or are we going off of the higher self, right? Which is the mother of the virtues and the harmonies of life. And the higher self, it breeds justice, mercy, love, and right. So are we going off of the higher self or are we going off the lower self? Once we have this understanding of our nature, of our being, we're made up of a spirit, a soul, and a body. We truly are the spirit, right? The true part of us is that spirit within us. And then we were made into a soul. We became a soul. So a part of us is that soul. And then we were put into this flesh. But we are not really this flesh. We are not really our souls. We are the spirit, that infinite part, that infinite breath that never began, never ends. We are all a part collectively of the Creator. So having this understanding, retaining this understanding is going to allow us in our everyday lives to go through and think about the way that we're rationalizing and thinking about the choices that we're making, the decisions that we're making, the things that we're doing in our every day. Not allowing certain things to take control of our emotions because we know it's part of the lower self, and the lower self is an illusion that will pass away. When you know your lower self, you know the illusions of the world, right? You know the things that will pass away. But when you know your higher self, you know Allah. You know the things that will not pass away. So when we understand our own lower self, we can look out into the world. We can see the illusions of the world. We can see the things that are passing away. And then when we look into our higher selves, right? When we look into our higher self, we know that stillness. We know that peace. We know that truth. We know Allah. We know the things that don't pass away. Now we can work on not fretting. Now we can work on not worrying about the lower self, about the illusions of the world, because we know it's a thing that will pass away. It's going to pass away anyways, an illusion, right? And we can be blissful in that higher nature, in that higher self. I thought that I would just bring this to you all because it's a very great and vital part of what it is that we're learning in life and the way that we're going throughout life. Everyone needs to know their higher self and their lower self, right? We got two selves, the higher self and the lower self. Understanding that, like I said, is going to help throughout your everyday life. Just be able to say, which one am I pulling from? Am I living in my higher self or am I living in my lower self? Is this my lower self trying to play the higher self and be deceiving? So it's many factors that go into that. So Thank you for sticking up to the end of this video. I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming by and watching another video and sitting along with me for a few minutes. I changed up the background, the scenery a little bit. All I did was flip the camera. It's another part of the studio, so you see. There's the window, but this thing locked up. I wasn't able to turn it all the way. All right, family. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.